that is working. I think we're ready to go live. Woohoo! All right, my friends. So we are live again for our Talk Power BI episode. This is going to be a really special one. We have a special guest here today, but this time I do want to take time to make sure that the audio is working. We've had in the past where, well, last time you couldn't hear me, which was still okay. So if you're joining us online, do say hello in the chat box. Let us know where you're watching us from. I love hearing that. By the way, this is me, Avi, from Seattle, and we have Charles Elwood as a guest today, joining from Holland, Michigan, and I'll be talking to you about Charles in a sec. So yeah, let me know how the audio is working. Jen Nabel is here. Jen, let me know if the audio is working. Actually, let's so Charles, Holland, Michigan, I got that right.
Yep, that's correct.
Perfect. So folks, yeah, let us know if you can hear both Charles and I, and we'll go from there. So maybe I'll tee it off, assuming you guys can hear me. Well, I guess Jen said hi, so it should be good. So all right, let's see. We have another hello. Augustine says hello from Argentina. Jen is saying that it sounds good. I can't read the name, but it's written in the Japanese characters. Hello from Tokyo. Hello, my friend. Arigato? Is that what you say? I should really learn some of the hellos across the world. I know hola. For any of the Spanish speaking folks out there, hola. Welcome here. Audio sounds good. Ricardo says, Paul is saying audio is good. Thank you, folks, for checking in. Johnny from Copenhagen, Denmark. Roland says hello from Toronto. Sadesh is here, says hi. Marianne is here. Oh yeah, hey, Marianne is there rooting for us. It's always good to see, faces you know. Marianne is of course part of Team Avi. Anybody who's part of the Learn Power BI family is no stranger to Marianne, so you know her well. Warren says hi from New Delhi, India. Abdullah says hi from Pakistan. Okay, great. So I think we're all set. So I'm gonna jump into it, my friends. So again, by the way, sometimes we have a special topic. Once we're past that, we always stay back to answer your Power BI questions. So hold off on the Q&A. But today we have a special guest, and let me come over here. So let me kind of set it up for you. So this morning I sent an email saying that a lot of times one of the biggest fears of somebody considering Power BI consulting is, oh my gosh, how am I going to find clients? Or, oh, that's not me. I don't want to do that part. And all of that resistance. By the way, there might be some of you out there who have joined the session, but they're like, oh, yeah, I don't really want to be a consultant. I think you're going to find a lot of material in this, which is going to be helpful for you, even if you work inside a company. I have had this thing in my head where these two things are sometimes they feel fundamentally different, but at a lot of levels they aren't, right? I mean, your internal clients are still there, even if you work at a company. So I think you're going to find a lot of benefit out of it either way. But yeah, so finding good clients, finding good projects, that's can be one of the biggest fears. And Charles, I'm sure, started in the same place. But it's so odd that he recently sent me an email talking about his fear of having too many clients. He said, oh my gosh, my queue is full. And if all of them kind of jump on board at the same time, how am I going to handle that? And of course, we talked about that. And you know, we can have the Learn Power BI family assist Charles if that happens. But it's so odd that he has gone from that to this in a short time. And I would say, and folks, I always feel so lucky because I get to live in awe. I get to live in awe of everything that our students are accomplishing and the challenges they're overcoming. So I'm constantly in awe of that. So that's why we have Charles here today. So I'm gonna say one more thing. I have this list of Charles quotes now. Charles, I don't know. I don't think I ever told you that, but I wrote some down. So the one that I'm gonna start with just blew me away. And you said, I retired last week. It just so happens that what I'm doing in retirement makes me more money and makes me happy. Whew. So that's a Charlesism, my friend. Hold on to that. But so Charles, why don't we start with you telling us about yourself and your company and what you do? Let's start there.
Yeah, so um, myself. I'm, I guess I'm a half Thai. My dad's American, my mom's Thai. And I've lived my dad was traveling around the world when I was younger. I've been all over the world, lived in Indonesia, Thailand, the Netherlands for a while. And I guess from that, that's been a big part of me in that I bridge cultures. I can understand and empathize from all different types of people, different types of cultures. So that's how I started. And then,
Mm-hmm.
I got into engineering. I got my MBA, so it was an interesting blend because I was taking engineering and math and sciences, and then I was doing business, and that was really hard. And then I got into work, and I was always doing stuff with data. Every
Mm-hmm.
single job. I was at Delphi Automotive for a little while and writing VBA on top of Excel to analyze their data. Went to GE and used Access to analyze data there. Spent some time at EFI using Doors and at Delphi too. And I was just noticing, all these companies had data all over the place, and I think the most fascinating one might have been JCI, where the commodity that they were buying pricing, the scope was in one database, and maybe there was a different database for financial and different database for project scope. They were using doors, so you had this just disconnected data all over the
Yeah.
place. So so I finally this one company I was working at, I was noticing that there's data all over the place. And I actually started with Excel. And I was like, I'm just going to put some data in Power Pivot charts and stuff. And I was doing that. And, it was getting big, and there was VLOOKUPs and tabs.
Yeah.
And somebody, I went to a presentation from a Microsoft employee to a makers group, and they said, you should look at Power BI. And that was like a year before this. So I finally downloaded, and I was trying it out, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, this solves all my
Wait,
problems.
so
This
did
is
you
so
download
powerful.
it right after that, or
No,
was
it
that?
was it was about a year
Yeah,
later. I think, yeah,
that's
it
interesting.
might have been a while after, and I
Yeah,
was still trying to get Excel to just I was
yeah,
fighting Excel, and I think I had the version that didn't there was what 13. One of the versions didn't have Power Query, Power Pivot. So
yes, yes,
so I went, but once I found Power BI, things just took off within that company. I They made a position for me for BI manager, and then so here's an interesting thing. I was started the side thing, outside of work, and I went to a mentor for startups. She had a group of startups, and I pitched my idea.
yeah,
And after about half an hour, she stopped me and she said, "Charles,
yeah,
you're being too salesy. You're selling the tool. Clients don't want to hear just about the tool."
yeah,
And she's like, "You just need to listen.
yeah,
Listen to people's problems. Sit down, listen to them, and then if you can solve that problem, then provide your solution. But you really need to listen first." Because I spent, I don't know,
yeah,
30 minutes talking.
yeah.
Um, So I went home and I took it to heart. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, that my first pitch, and it was, she gave me all this feedback, and I
Yeah.
didn't realize at the time it was the most important feedback
Mm-hmm.
ever. And I've heard in some of your videos too. It's listening to the process, listening to understanding their why. Why, what are they going to do with the data? What's the
Yeah.
insight? What's the problem they're trying to solve? And then kind of work back. What's the process they're having problems with? And then work backwards from there. So that's kind of, and then so yeah, that the other thing she said was, you need to validate this. And it wasn't proven to me that Power BI could be something. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I don't know, this may not work. So I went within my company to different departments. I was like, what's your process? What's your problems? And then I went to the marketing department. I went to the accounting department, and every single one of them I found had a problem that I could solve with Power BI. So
Wow.
I was just going around. I think you have
But wait,
mentioned
you
this
you were
once too.
going around listening, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
So,
I wasn't begging. I
yeah,
wasn't, give me your data. I was like,
Yeah.
what are your processes and
What
what
are
are
your
your
problems? What
yeah,
hurts? Yeah, what's painful? I'm gonna share this quote that I saw on inside a Microsoft building, and I think it's pertinent. So it had a picture of the Chinese symbol for listen, and apparently the way it literally translates is I. So it's the Chinese symbol for listen, and it says, "I give you my ears, my eyes, my undivided attention, and my heart." Right. So yeah, listening is
yeah,
certainly key. So carry on, mate. So you're going out to these different departments, just listening. Hey, tell me what your problems are, and what
right.
happened next.
And then I think the most telling one, I'm going to retell this story again, was there was one department, and they actually kind of heard about what I was doing through other departments, and they invited me in and said, Charles, come in, show us what you're doing. And I remember walking in and, sit down, and people were still walking in, and one person goes, Charles, what do you do all day? What is a BI manager? What is business intelligence? What do you do?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is not going to go well. I didn't even start my presentation yet, but I went through my whole spiel. And then kind of halfway through,
Mm-hmm.
I switched it. So this was before I learned the listening thing. And I
Ah,
switched it,
okay.
like, what kind of issues are you having? And then they talked about it, and they were like, we
Mm-hmm.
have this database, we have this. And so then I listened, I was like, oh, well, and then I brought up an example, I think maybe of a report or something. And then they stopped and they said, can I log in on your laptop right now to the database? And I said, oh, yeah. So I turned the laptop over.
Yeah.
They logged in. And then I remember, so I brought it back and then I looked and, pulled
Listing.
it.
Yeah.
There's the tables and they're like,
Yeah.
tables are all there. I was like, yeah, yeah. And watch this. And I dragged one into the visual and then I dragged the date and then I set a
Oh
filter,
my
I think.
gosh.
And I think I did a quick measure count and then maybe I
Yeah.
sliced it by date or something.
Yeah.
And I mean, jaws dropped, eyes got real big, and they
Yeah.
said, that is amazing. So, that story is, if it's kind of those, the switches you
Yeah.
see that at that point, he trusted me with the data. He
Yeah.
logged in, and then the switch was, you can do this that fast with that data. And,
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, that's a beautiful story. Of course, I've heard it before, and every time it kind of makes gives me the goosebumps because there's
yeah,
so many elements in there. So for one, folks, I've seen that, and Charles shared that experience too, which is it's better to kind of show them than tell them, right? I mean, if they can experience with their own data, boy, I mean, it's going to be totally something different. And another thing is this. I think you get to experience this more as a trainer, which my role is, or even as a consultant where if you've been working in Power BI for a long time, you kind of get jaded, right? If somebody clicks on something and everything cross filters, I'm not gonna react to it. By now it's expected, but it's fun because when you work with somebody new and you right, I mean, just the first thing, like Charles hadn't even done anything. He had just connected to the data source and it showed them a list of tables. And Charles said at that time he got a reaction. Well, we forget the world that's out there. And sometimes it's easy because I feel like we live in a bit of a Power BI bubble. I remember going to the last Power BI summit and feeling like I'm done, like nobody needs my help because everybody seemed to be doing great. But you step outside of the bubble and there is a tremendous potential, right? Exactly what Charles said. You go out, talk to these different departments, different companies. Almost everybody can use Power BI. So brilliant, man. That's a beautiful story. Carry on.
and so I'm just thinking now. I actually have another story just from last night of examples of people, just realizing the power and something clicks.
Uh huh.
So I was working with a client, and I shared PBIX file, and they were trying to get the source right. So I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
self-documenting,
Yeah.
but a lot of times, and I remember this too, you don't realize what all those steps are, and that initial step, the source,
Mm.
you got to change it and link it to your own file.
Yeah.
So yeah, just yesterday, we had been going back and forth with PBX files, and finally I got on a Zoom call, and I showed them, go to source, go to browse, pull in your file, and they did that. And then, that file had the M code that cleaned all the data. So they clicked it, it came in, boom, there were no errors.
Yeah.
And you saw on their face just pure joy and
Yeah.
happiness that
Oh
the
man.
data was coming in and there's no errors,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just that power, just to see that another human,
I
just have
know.
that
I know.
joy
Yeah.
and realize the power, that this data is now
Absolutely.
coming in super clean, ready to go.
Yeah.
It's so rewarding, and I think that's the best part for me is giving that, to other people.
Letting them experience that. Absolutely.
Yeah,
And folks, yeah, I mean, that's what I would say, and I feel Charles would agree that the more I've gotten into technology, the deeper I've gotten into it. From outside, it looks like Avi is such a techie, but the more I've gotten in, the more I feel it's about people, and technology is just a tool. So terrific. So tell us about. So now you're a full time consultant, and you're helping out. So tell us the name of your company. Tell us where people can find you if they need to.
yeah. So my company is called Solosmatica, and solosmatica.com, and I'm on LinkedIn. And the for the consultants out there or people thinking about it, one of the things I learned, Avi, is what you talked about is, before I didn't understand what the funnel was. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand the dial of how, you could limit people coming into the funnel. But I learned quickly that there's a whole world of people out there looking for help with Power BI.
Yeah.
And if you don't kind of open it up and make it easy for them to find you, then
Yeah.
then they never will.
Yeah.
So I put a call to action on my website, on LinkedIn, on all my emails,
Mm-hmm.
and now I don't sell anymore because I just kind of put the basics on my website. It's like, hey, do you have
Yeah.
disconnected data? Do you have raw data? And do you wish you could just like
Yeah.
make some sense and make some impact and go help the world?
Yeah.
And then I have the call to action, and well,
Yeah.
I have the visual too. People are so visual. I've got
Uh-huh.
an report, and
But
once people
yeah,
see
actually, so is
that,
this on your
yeah,
website?
yeah, it's
Let me bring it up. So folks on the Zoom call, I'm not sharing my screen right now because I wanted to focus on Charles. But for folks on YouTube, I'm going to bring up his website. So solismatica.com. By the way, folks, it's also linked in the description if you want to find it later. And of course, you can find Charles Elwood, as he said, on LinkedIn as well. Um, so yeah, you're talking about the problem, the solution, the rewards, and you have an interactive dashboard there. Of course, I love that idea as well. That looks beautiful. You got some testimonials, you got your story, and finally the services you offer. And I'm actually a little surprised. I was expecting like the contact thing was going to be pretty bold as well, but right now at least I'm looking at it is if I hit
oh
contact,
yeah, if
cool.
it's free consultation up top. There's a button right
Yeah.
after the problem. So that's a good point. I could probably make it a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bigger.
Actually, do you? I know in your email signature. So last night we were exchanging
Yep,
emails, and I said, "Oh, Charles, I love your signature." And you have a really bold call to action about booking a call with you. I don't
yep.
see that on your website yet. Or do you know if you're gonna place it there or not? That's
It should be on the home page, and it's right under the kind of the problem
Oh,
statement on the
oh,
front
okay, got
page.
it, got it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's free consultation. I scrolled
yep,
right past it. Maybe you can
yeah,
repeat that because I scrolled right past it, and then
yeah,
at the bottom all I said was contact. But hey, I
yep,
mean, we're just kind of picking on the fine stuff here. Let's
yep.
let's get back up a little bit. And you said something which I want to start there. I want to level set there. You said something about there are a lot of opportunities there. So yeah, let me just kind of ask you. So, what is your pulse of the Power BI market? Where is that going? If you maybe speak more locally, I know you're very active local and you focus a lot on local businesses, but if you have a general sense otherwise, just kind of through your lens, what does it look like?
Yeah, so that's been interesting. And for all of the data-driven people out there, which is this community, that I love this. This is the tribe. What I did was I started just searching for. I was looking at through Indeed, and I would search for keywords like Power BI, ClickView, Tableau, and I was just watching the jobs. The is it going up, going down? I was also using Google Trends, which I think I
Yeah.
learned from you, and watching the kind of the worldwide
Mm-hmm.
trends. I was watching the BI blogs. There's Forrester and there's
Yeah.
a quadrant, Magic Quadrant. Um, and all of this, I was watching, the two
Yeah.
other BI people. They were kind of in the lead, but then I saw Power BI, and the curve for Power BI was
Mm-hmm.
it was doing
Yeah.
something like this, and it was about to cross over.
Wow.
And then you looked at the Magic Quadrant and the Forrester, and
Oh, it's
5 years ago,
unbelievable.
there's some animations on this, but it
Mm-hmm.
was everybody was clumped together, and then all of a sudden, boom, like
Yeah.
Microsoft just like left everybody.
Yeah.
Um, and
By the way,
so
I'll call
yeah,
out, guys, folks in the YouTube. Could you get a sense that Charles is kind of a guy who loves data? I mean, the number of things he mentioned, like, oh, I was watching this, and yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, man, keep going.
yeah. So I was watching this, and then so yeah, their curve was crossing over some others. They're doing the integration, which I was like, why are they doing this? How are they
Yeah.
doing this? And it was, they were finally integrating all their products. I think they have the ERP system, full ERP, CRM, Outlook, Excel, SharePoint. I mean,
Yeah.
they just Azure just had everything, whereas the other ones were kind of bits and pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But BI just, Microsoft's product had everything. So then that's when I said, okay, this is happening, and I'm transitioning to this. And then, I think Avi and you and I have talked, but we were thinking the medium market.
Small and medium
Microsoft,
business.
yeah, Fortune
Yeah.
500s. We're like, yeah, there's some big consultants there, and it's probably saturated. So here's a wide open market in the middle, and they do have disconnected data, but
Mm-hmm.
I was finding from my clients so far, I'm watching this, I get an awful lot actually up in the upper segments,
Yeah.
and they, it was like Power BI was
But
given to the
but can
company. Yeah,
oh, okay, okay, got it. That's interesting. That's kind of new, I must say. Yeah.
yeah,
All right. So carry on. So Power BI and of course Microsoft has this brilliant strategy. So besides having all of these pieces, they're pretty much giving it away. So I was talking
yeah.
to another MVP. And apparently, so I'm not well. I wasn't in the know earlier. I was just doing my full time job, so I wasn't. But what she said was that that's how they started pushing SharePoint. They kind of gave it away for free. So what's happening is Microsoft is selling this what's called an E5 license for Office 365, and so companies coming to them, hey, yeah, we need Office. Everybody needs Office pretty much. And they sell them E5, which includes Power BI. So these companies realize that, oh, we got Office, but oh, we got this Power BI
Power
tool.
BI. Oh,
Let's check it
yeah.
out. So that's what you were saying. So you're finding companies like that as well.
Yeah, there's Fortune 500, and there's people joining groups, and then it's the people.
Hmm.
We've been using Power BI. That person left. We
Yeah.
need you to figure out
So
this report. So
so
then there's this
yeah.
fear. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like, what do I do with this? So then they reach
Yeah.
out and find
I
me.
know. Oh, that's a hard position to be in, folks. I'm sure who are watching us online. I'm sure some of you experience that where you just step into it, and and yeah, you're like, oh my gosh, this other guy left. So one question that I want to ask you is that, and I don't know if it's been kind of me. Sometimes I wonder like if I attract a specific crowd. Now, I did spend some time in IT, but most of the time I spend in business. And folks who listen to me, they know how I talk about IT and business, and I see a future where they're both kind of working together, but that's not the life that I experienced. There was a lot of friction. There was, I'll admit, a lot of angst in me. So maybe there's something there where I attract a specific kind of clients. But for me, what I found was even if it was big companies, it was these small groups reaching out to me, like a small
Yeah.
finance group or something like that. IT would reach out to me once in a while, but frankly, I haven't done. So yeah, I mean, is that what you're seeing as well? Kind of these
I,
small
I am.
units.
Yeah,
Great, great.
it might be small units or individuals that,
Oh, beautiful.
they're in a large company. They're like, I don't know where to get help with Power BI. We may have a department, but
Yeah,
then they start going through these online channels, and then they go through YouTube or LinkedIn searches. And
yeah,
that's one funnel that I wanted to share with everybody in this group is LinkedIn is so powerful because
yeah,
people search for Power BI consultant, and then they
yeah.
look for what's happened to me a couple times is they see a connection that they know, and
Uh
it's like,
huh.
oh, that person knows
Yeah,
me, and that person knows, you. And so then they'd reach out to that person. It's like, hey, is Charles good to work with? And they're like, oh yeah, yeah, I know him. He's a good
yeah.
guy. Then that trust, it's like that's the commodity I was talking about is trust that's being
Yeah.
shared, that's being passed on. they
Uh-huh.
pass on that trust,
Yeah.
to that person, to you.
Great.
And that's been so powerful. Yeah.
That's terrific. Hey, thanks for sharing that tip. So I do want to get deeper into kind of specific kind of. So folks, we'll talk about how to get clients, and if some of those heard the term funnel and going what funnel, we'll talk about that too. But I want to kind of pace ourselves because yeah, Charles has a lot to share, and I want to get that all out for all of you. So so I'm sure this is kind of a common fear that how am I going to get clients? Oh, I'm not made for this. I can't do sales. Was this there? How did that feel when you were starting out on this journey? And were there other fears kind of mixed in? What was the inner dialogue going on way back
Oh
then?
gosh, Avi. Yeah. So I have anxiety. I hate public speaking.
Oh gosh, you
I
know nobody believes you for that one, right?
so I really do. And video and this medium, YouTube, I've discovered is the perfect medium for me, because
Yeah,
I still have that fear in front of a whole crowd,
yeah.
but I
Well,
for this I can
yeah,
reach so many people and add so much value.
yeah,
But I don't have that, as much of that fear when I'm speaking
yeah.
online. But
Folks, I will call out that Charles does speak at user groups and other events and local businesses, and he's received extremely well. So yeah, he's yeah, he doesn't realize it, but he's pretty good there too. All right, man, carry
yeah.
on.
So I've always had this fear, and for some of the people out there, introverts and stuff, the fear, I think, is getting up there, stalling, not knowing what to say, freezing up, saying the wrong thing, or who knows.
Yeah,
But I've discovered now, and it's more excitement now. Now that I have Power BI, and I can tell people, and I can see it in their eyes almost. I can read a room now, and see the people that are starting to get it. And that's motivates me now. It's weird,
yeah,
but before I was scared to do that. I was like, I'm not going to speak. But now I was like, I kind of want to speak. Maybe this is just
yeah,
excitement that I want to help the world, and I want to help these individuals. So that helped me overcome that fear. But there's all kinds of fear. There's fear, insurance. You have this safety net,
yeah.
and before you leave, and you're like, why would I leave this? A lot of people are like, you have a full-time job. It's every
Mm-hmm.
day. You don't have to search
Yeah, the
for
paycheck just
any
shows
work.
up. I remember
Yeah,
really missing that. I'm like, oh, and I was like missing a limb. I'm like, oh, man, that
yeah.
clockwork. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's a true fear. And I
Mm-hmm.
had to take action to. I was like, how am I going to attack this fear? So I called up health insurance, and I finally realized, oh, this is not that bad.
Yeah.
I was like,
So
and then yeah, go
So
ahead.
it's kind of specific, but I often recommend that Cobra. That's an option to continue your coverage for 1 year. I did that, and that's what I generally recommend. Is that what you ended up with for now, or did you not choose the Cobra option and just went out and bought
Um,
medical insurance for
so
yourself?
my wife still works. So we're
Oh,
on
okay,
her
okay, great,
now.
great. Yeah,
Yep.
that does work
But
out. Yeah.
I did have a plan in place in
Mm-hmm.
case
Yeah.
um, she had to leave for any reason. We had a plan in place to get in, or get insurance from somewhere else.
Great.
But yeah, all kinds of fear. But on the flip side,
Yeah.
so I remember I was like, oh, I hope that they let me go, because I want that freedom. I want the freedom. And
That's
once I
crazy.
got it,
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, wow, this is
Oh my God,
fantastic.
that's really funny because I think
Yeah.
what that is sometimes, we want like somebody else to make the decision for us. Like we're
Yeah.
almost there, but we're like, shoot, man, I'm not sure if I can pull it. Can you pull it for me? So I think that was what's going on. I was like, I hope they, we part ways and so I can go on my own.
Yeah. And then once I was out, I was like,
Mhm.
oh, this is so great. I don't feel guilty. One of the things I always bothered me was going to 8 to 5, and
Uh-huh.
I felt guilty about leaving for an hour to watch my kids' soccer games. But I was like,
Yeah.
man, my values, my family, that's the
Yeah.
top thing for me.
Hmm.
And I don't control that time. And why do I feel guilty about spending this time
I
with
know.
my
Oh, I
family?
know. I mean, I remember working in places where I would like do the 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, but because the culture was to stay late, you felt guilty walking out the door, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's just one of those things. That's good.
Yeah.
Um, so tell me a little bit about that mindset though, because that is so beautiful. I'm gonna say it again. You said I retired last week, and you're referring to when you left that job, moved to full time consulting. You said I retired last week. It just so happens that what I'm doing in retirement makes me more money and makes me happy. First of all, man, where the heck did that come from? I mean, that was pretty recent. That's just incredible. How did it just pop up in your head? I mean, that thought is so beautiful. Tell me more about that. Tell me more
Well,
about that line.
yeah, it was kind of in the final 2 weeks. I was like, what is this for me? Why am I doing this? It was to be with family, is to pursue my interests. And, I think I've mentioned on this channel before, but I volunteer at the Holland Museum. And I listen to stories of immigrants that have come to the area. And that's just my passion, is listening and hearing people's stories, understanding the true deepest things about them, and having them be able to trust you enough that, and I think that's led into some of my, my business too, is now I've learned from
Yeah,
that how
yeah,
brave these people were, and how with trust they will share their most, you know, their inner stories with me of these hard journeys. So yeah, I was like, what is retirement? It's when people stop working 8 to 5 and they go and pursue their own interests, and some get jobs.
yeah.
I was like, and what is this job? It's playing with Power BI all day. And I
I
think
know.
Mods was one that I was talking, who's in the Pro Plus program, and he's like, Charles, yeah, you. I was like, yeah, I left another job for this job, and he's like, it's not a job. You're playing all day,
Oh my gosh.
Charles.
Oh gosh. I think we both owe Mads a note of thanks. I'll make sure I let him know. Terrific, man. That's beautiful. So let's dive in. And you talked a little bit. So folks, let me just speak about the funnel a little bit. So what Charles is talking about is let's see if I can draw a little bit of funnel. Is that a lot of things, and really not even if you're running a consulting business, like think about a website. Maybe that's a good example, right? So on a website, what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to come and view your webpage. Let's say you're running a e-commerce store where you sell shoes, right? So a lot of people are going to come in and just browse around. They're not going to do anything, right? But then some of them are going to go to a product page, right? So let's try that. So they actually visit a product page, right? So and the other ones just go to your website and bounce. That's the nature of the funnel. That's the way it works, right? And then the next level, maybe they would even add it to cart, right? And then some of them would hit the pay now button, and even then they would sometimes abandon and not complete the transaction, and then they would purchase, right? So a lot of things or interactions that we do kind of go through the funnel, and you got to identify what are the individual steps for your funnel, and then you can tune it like an engine. So you can say that, hey, this one is converting at 20%. What does that mean? That means if 100 people come to my website, if 100 people come over here, then out of that, 20 of them go over here. And of course, you're going to have numbers for each of this step, and then you can see that, hey, where do you want to focus on? Like, oh, maybe we need to showcase our best-selling products right up front, so draw more visitors and things like that. So, of course, if we take this in kind of a consulting, you would probably have a funnel where you get in contact with a lot of people, but some would go to the next stage and the next stage and the next stage, and then finally some would end up being your client. So that's what we talk about when we talk about a funnel. So Charles, you mentioned LinkedIn,
Mhm.
but I know you do a lot of kind of in-person local things as well. So tell us what's working for you, or maybe some of the things which you tried and didn't work.
Yeah.
So again,
So
folks, this is
yeah.
for getting clients for your consulting business, right? So Charles is kind of going to walk us through that journey. He's starting out. It's like, oh, cool, I'm here to do Power BI, but where are the people, right? Where are the people that I can help?
So I discovered early on the power of video. I think you said the first thing you did was like do a LinkedIn article. I was like, okay, so I put it up there, and I didn't realize the power of that. And then I think the second thing you had me do was say, hey, show up on my YouTube video with a panel. And I was like, and that scared me. I think I told you the night before, I told my wife, she's like, I need to cancel this. This makes me so nervous. And she said, no, or I think I was like, she said, can you do that? And I was like, I think it's too late. so,
Ah,
so yeah, so I
that's
actually
great.
stuck with it, and that's been such
Yeah,
a lesson learned for me, because I realized then the power of video to
yeah,
establish trust. And then I realized the power. So the people see you on a video, they're like, I
yeah,
think I kind of trust this guy. And then they go over to LinkedIn, and then they're kind of searching through your resume, your jobs. But then if you have a pillar article and it just explains your whole story, and
yeah.
the ones that read through that,
Mm-hmm.
then they're like, oh wow, this person I trust because he's got the
Yeah,
background. So now
yeah,
they hear your voice, they've seen you, and it's like, I trust this
yeah, yeah,
person. And then they see the LinkedIn, and then
yeah.
they might go to your website or some other, and then they pick a time to talk with you. Um,
Actually, I'm gonna have you
yeah,
pause there. So, folks,
yeah,
man, this is good stuff, and I want you to realize that, right? So, what Charles just talked about was the fact that people do business with people, right? So again, we were talking about earlier how the deeper I've gotten in technology is more about people. So think about the things he said, right? So video connection. He was talking about connection, and again, that remember what Charles said earlier, that it's not like selling. He doesn't sell anymore. So video establishes connection, and the article that he talked about on LinkedIn. And we'll make sure we do a direct link to his LinkedIn profile and his article as well in the description. So we'll go back and update that so you can find it easily. But that he's referring to talks about his story. It's not saying, "Oh, hey, Barbie is such an amazing thing. You should use it. Call me right now." No, no, it's just his story. Of course, part of it which he shared here right now, and that established that connection. And now they're kind of predisposed. Like, this guy seems okay. All right, so carry on. Take us from there.
yeah. And then we do a Zoom call, which is great too, because it's a video connection. It's not email. They hear your voice, they see
Love
you,
it. Yeah.
eye contact, and then you listen. So that's where I do the listening. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, this person not only I trust because I like their story and I've seen them before, but
Yeah.
they're listening to me.
Yeah.
Wow, they're listening to
Yeah.
my true problems. And then at the end, I was like, and then I do the visual thing. It's like, I think we can do this and we can solve this problem. And let me
Yeah.
repeat it back to you. And it shows them how you're listening and you really understand. And you,
Yeah.
after a while, their underlying issues too. So you kind of like,
Uh huh.
so this group, or you can't get training on this, and you want me to help you so that you can,
Yeah.
impact the group. And once you hit, on the things that they've talked about, and then you hit on their underlying issues,
Yeah.
they're like, this is the guy.
Yeah.
Then it's the close almost. And the close for me has been, okay, let's look at your data. And when they show you the data,
Yeah.
that's, the complete trust link
Yeah.
is there. And then, so Avi, so I've done this locally too. That one's a little more interesting because,
Okay. Keep
so I
going. Yeah.
go to local networking events,
Yeah.
and it'll be, lawyers, it'll be Rotarians, it'll be different groups,
Mm-hmm.
people that may not know anything about data or what I do. Um, but I'll go in there, and that one, that's really when your story, there's a connection is made, a human connection. Because I often talk about the Holland Museum thing, where I
Yeah.
connect with immigrants to the area,
Yeah.
and hear their stories, and they're like, "Wow, you do that for the people in the community." I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"That's a really cool story." I also help STEM clubs in the area. I
Mm.
work with
That's
501c3, and
science, technology,
yeah,
something.
engineering, math,
Got it.
and
Got it.
I first Lego League is what I help support, or we
Yeah.
have a Rubik's cubing club, and I found that, you know corporations don't give money to individuals; they give it to a 501c3 because there's tax benefit.
Mm.
So I partnered with a 501c3, and then the money started flowing, and then I can help all these poor, not poor, but like families that were
Yeah.
struggling to find money. So I tell people about that story, and then I was like, hey, and also I just started a business, and they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, it's the scariest thing I've ever done, but it's also the most fun and exciting and most rewarding and freeing thing I've ever
Yeah.
done. And they're like, whoa, tell me more about that. So then you go into their story, and it's like, yeah, and I take all this data and I help people, And their greatest fear is they're afraid of all these new tools and AI and BI, and they're like, what do I do with all this stuff? And I was like, I go help these people add value to their organizations and help them,
Yeah.
make their job easier, make their processes easier. And then usually there's two or three people in the room that then they'll start asking, it's like, how do you do that? And then
Yeah.
how do you connect the data? And oh, you can do it from different sources, and you can do a
Yeah.
refresh too. And then I
Yeah.
was like, okay, those two right there,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
they get it.
Okay.
So
Whew. Oh my gosh, man, that was like a tour de force. So, folks, when I hear this all the time, it's like, oh, I don't want to be a consultant because I don't want to sell. Now, of course, we have talked about this within our internal group, and I always say that, man, I'm out there, so I'm an entrepreneur, and I sell. I sell my course and all that stuff, invite people to that. But everything that I've seen out there is that the best salesmen are the ones who never sell, right? So, and you saw this, you heard Charles talk about this whole thing. Where was the sales? Where there was no point where it got salesy. And of course, the way he approached it, he started off with this story. And there was one person I follow, James Whitaker, amazing guy, works in Microsoft. I hope he leaves because then the rest of the world will get more of his wisdom. But he talked about how to become an interesting speaker, and he said, "Oh, you got to have interesting stories." And of course, people said, "Oh, how do you get interesting stories?" And he said, "Bloody hell, live an interesting life." And you heard that in Charles, right? I mean, he didn't have to like reach for anything like the STEM Club and Lego this and oh gosh, right? The Holland Museum, interviewing the immigrants, listening to their story. So I think we focus so much on like money and all that stuff, but I, I don't know. I mean, I think we should all live interesting lives because frankly, it helps you in everything. Even if you were a full-time employee, I think it's going to help you even there, right? So cool. That's terrific. So let's so clearly we see kind of what you're doing here. You're being 100% authentic, 100% genuine. So you're getting some contacts through LinkedIn. You've had online presence. You've published a LinkedIn article. You've done videos here and so forth. And there's some people who kind of find connections, find common connections, and reach out to you through that. And then, of course, maybe there's some online interaction, but at the end of it, you invite them to a Zoom call. Or you're going to these local meetups, things like that, and there you're talking about. I think I've heard it before, but it didn't like sink in that you don't go there and say, guys, let me do a Power BI demo.
yeah,
You're saying, hey, this is me. This is me. Not even like your Power BI story. And then almost like at the end of it or near the end of it, it's like, oh, by the way, I am also on this crazy adventure. And then you let them ask the questions. So that's really brilliant. So for that, once you meet and you see the people who raise their hands, they probably come to you as you kind of step down from the speaker stage, and they probably approach you, or you would approach them. And would you then set up a follow up call? If it's local, do you try to meet them in person, or do you just do Zoom call because it's easier?
I typically, so everybody is so busy these days. It's hard to do, you know, a call, and I think there's still a fear sometimes,
Yeah.
especially the local, to come maybe for a formal one-on-one, and then they
Uh
might
huh.
have to say no or whatever. So,
Yeah.
so what I've done a lot is I use Loom and I record a video, and I listen to their problem,
Yeah.
maybe over email, and then I record a Loom video, and
Yeah.
then maybe show them, Adventure Works or something. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, this is how I would do it, and
Yeah.
then I send it to them, and then they can
Yeah.
view that on their
Yeah.
own
Yeah.
time, and then that trust that the next switch could happen there, and then that there's like, hey, I saw your video, I need to meet with you now. Then I send the Calendly link. It's like, okay, let's
Okay.
meet face to face. It's like, because at that point they're sold and they're just coming to you, and there's
Yeah.
not that uncomfortable
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
pitching
That's
something.
brilliant.
It's
Oh
yeah.
man, that was so good. I'm gonna kind of try to recap it again. So I want to hit that power of video. Power of video. That was awesome. So for one, you did show up on this channel and talk about it. So by the way, yeah, folks, a lot of you may have already seen Charles. So this was the trio of Charles, Grace, and Diego, and that was pretty amazing conversation as well. So you kind of showed up there, and then you use Loom, by the way. So I'm gonna bring it up for our users on the screen here. Some of the tools that he mentioned, and we'll try to collect them and put that in the notes as well. So Loom.com, it's a free tool. At least to start with. They may have a paid version as well. So Loom.com is what he's using to record videos. And the other one he said is Calendly. And Calendly is the one that you can use to have people book meetings with you. And the best part about this is that it syncs with your Outlook or Google Calendar or whatever. So anytime that you block off busy, if you have meetings, it'll block it off automatically. And if people do book a meeting with you, it'll automatically show up on your calendar. So that makes it super convenient. They can just go there, pick their favorite time, a time that works for them, and it goes from there. So those are pretty easy. But so you use loom.com, and I'm just going to jump to it because I already know this. So talking about power of video, even when you're working with clients, the way you operate is that you would maybe meet with them and do some work for them, and then you send them recorded videos recapping what you had done, and it just blows them away, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh my gosh. So folks, I mean, I had done that without thinking about it, and I had kind of forgotten about it. And of course Charles brought that up, and I think somebody else seconded that too, that they have used, and it's really powerful. So now we might go back to our Pro Plus community and tell everybody do it. Guys, just if you want to blow your customers out of the water, then so I'm going to write that down as well. So record video for clients about work you did. And I'm sure you probably find the videos useful. So so that's good. So video is powerful, and you heard Charles use it in different ways. Okay, I had a question that I forgot. Cool. Anything else that you want to share about this process of kind of getting clients? You've already shared so much. This has been really valuable, even for me. And I hope the YouTube crowd is enjoying it. Folks, let us know if you are. So yeah, anything else that you want to share around this topic of getting clients?
So yeah, the Loom videos, I use it for the initial to help build that trust, but I also use it on the back end, like you said. Once I have their data,
Yeah.
and we do a Zoom call sometimes, but people forget, or it's not recorded, they can't play it over again. So those Loom calls, I found my clients love them because they can play it anytime, they can play it over, they can watch it 10 times, they can fast forward, rewind, and I've just gotten such great feedback. And it's also with their data. I think that's the key too, is you can watch videos with somebody else's data, with AdventureWorks, with Northwind, but man, it's the patterns aren't your patterns. The data isn't your pattern or your data. So the columns, you have to like remap them in your mind.
Yeah, and
But
it's not
here,
always
yeah,
easy for a new user, right? I mean, they
yeah,
say, "Well, how does this help me?" So you showing them what you did with your data. Hey, here's what I did, and so forth, and that I'm sure it really sinks in.
yeah, it's huge value. They love those videos. I've gotten so much feedback about video with my data has made such a difference. I can play back and rewind.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, terrific. So I'm gonna do another quote, another Charlesism, which I wrote
Uh-oh.
down. So folks, and you heard this in the call as well, but man, he spoke so beautifully the other day. I wrote it down, and I'm gonna read it out again, and that's kind of almost a good recap for everything we've talked about. So this was in our earlier meeting, and he said, "Every time I go out, I tell my story. I do not sell. I just tell them what I do, and say it in the way they understand it. Inevitably, at least one person stands up and says, I have data. I need your help." Oh my gosh. So folks, yeah, they all have data. They all need your help. It's out there. So so sharing a story, it can be really, really scary. Because I know in my life in corporate America, there was this stark divide between, kind of this work-life thing, right? As if work is not life, right? I mean, what kind of, but anyway, I've never liked that term, right? So, but there was a stark divide, like, oh, that's work. And I remember for me, the drive back and forth was a transition. I almost changed to a different person, which is weird, guys. We're not two people. We're not the Joker. Who is the other Two-Face? I don't remember the Batman character. Anyway, so we're not that, and yeah, we're the same person. But so it doesn't come easily. Tell us about that. I mean, tell us, is there something that people can help to get over that fear, or they just gotta bite the bullet and do it? And maybe tell us how valuable has that been for you for sharing a story? Maybe that'll encourage them to do it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I was very scared to share my story. Your LinkedIn, you remember your
Yeah, I
the LinkedIn
remember.
pillar
Yeah,
story?
yeah,
I I wrote that, and I think I held on to it for about a week.
yeah,
I had it ready to publish, and you just wonder if this goes out there and it bombs and nobody likes it, nobody reads it,
yeah,
nobody says anything, or they critique it.
yeah.
Um,
Oh gosh,
you're
yes.
like,
I was like, oh,
ooh,
Charles.
that's going to be hard for me to stomach.
Uh-huh.
Um, but but if I, then, but I think what I learned from you, Avi, is then you realize, what if I don't?
Yeah,
What if I don't? And what if I never get my story out there
yeah,
and people don't know about this?
yeah,
That is what finally made me, I was going to just push this button.
yeah,
So I did, and then people react and people resonate with your story, with taking a journey, with, you know, pushing yourself to the limits, to the edge, taking
yeah,
action, doing the stuff they want to do almost. They want you to take it and then tell them it's possible. The journey, the path is there. I've gone on it,
yeah,
and I want to help you. And people, once they hear that story,
yeah,
they resonate, and they're, I think, Avi, that's why your story is, the steps you've told your story, and all of
yeah,
us want to support you. And I think I tell my story, and I get so many people now. It's like, wow, that is an incredible journey. And tell me about
yeah,
how scary it was. Was it scary? I'm like, well, yeah, super
yeah.
scary.
So,
People
yeah,
resonate with that.
yeah,
It's
yeah, man. So it's the it's the human condition, right? I mean, what I have realized is that we are so scared and enveloped in ourselves. But when you do go out, you realize, man, everybody's struggling with the same shit, right? It's
yeah,
crazy. So, of course, when you open yourself up, then, yeah, I mean, can you get some people to shoot you down and call you names or something? Maybe, but more often than not, you're going to find people who say, hey, dude, yeah, that made sense. And, folks, as I said at the beginning, I mean, I live in awe of my students. Um, and, and, um, and I'm grateful for that because I realize that sometimes people don't listen to me because I don't know, for them I'm like at the top of something which I don't feel like that way, but they do. And I've talked to people and I would tell them something. I was like, oh gosh, yeah, you got to do that, and they would say, Avi, it's easy for you to say. And that's why I'm glad that I can bring along people like Charles, where yeah, it's and I love this idea of this common man superhero, not somebody who was born on a different planet and had superpowers, right? That's easy, right? That's easy.
yeah.
But man, we're no different. We're no different than any of you out there. You don't have anything special. Maybe the only thing different is we did it, but so can you, right? So
Yeah.
that's really beautiful. So how do you? So another thing that I want to ask you is man, I can't even reconcile these two things where you talk about your fear of public speaking, but you speak so well, and you talk about going to these meetings and how you resonate with people. What is that? I don't. What do you think about that?
I think maybe genetics. I have these, that I shake, and
Yeah,
and I've honestly had discussions with family members that said, I want to find a job where I never have to speak in front of people or be in meetings ever again. And that was years ago. But then along the
yeah,
lines of, well, now that I know about Power BI and I have this passion and I want to do this
yeah,
all the time, if I don't get in front of people and I don't tell people about Power BI, who will? Who will stand up? And
yeah,
so I think I had to weigh those. I was like, okay, I have this fear and I'm going to shake in front of people, but I think I've
yeah,
realized now, kind of like the pillar story. I put myself out there. I stand in front of people, and I do
yeah,
still get that anxiety,
yeah,
but
yeah,
but that that look on people's eyes
yeah,
when there's jaw drops, their eyes get real
yeah,
big, and they're like, "We love what you're doing, and
yeah,
you're gonna give me so much in my life, such confidence, such value you can add to me."
mm-hmm,
And I was like, I got to continue this.
yeah,
Even though it scares me to
yes,
death.
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
have to, if I
Yeah,
don't do it, I won't get these opportunities. So yeah,
yeah.
it's a weird thing. It's like right before I do this, I get so scared. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, I gotta cancel, I gotta cancel. But then I do it and I get into it. I'm like,
I know.
I gotta keep going.
Yeah, yeah. So guys, yeah, there's so many things in there which I just said. For one, is the fear of something is often way bigger than even if it actually happens. For most of the times, it doesn't actually happen, right? So, but you know, and I've experienced that. This you know, what Charles was talking about, like forgetting what you're saying. And of course, Charles and I were exchanging emails. Like, dude, it's not funny how many times that happened to Talk Power BI. You've all witnessed it, and that has frankly definitely helped me with that. Where you see it happen, and then you realize that world didn't end, because that's how big we make it in our head. That, oh, that's gonna be the end of the world. I'm gonna be, you know, kind of shamefaced and never gonna have to face public. So fear of something is way bigger than that thing itself. And another thing that Charles talked about was that, and I've experienced it every single time I've struggled with something like this, which is you gotta put yourself aside, right? It's not about you, right? So, and when, as much as you make it about yourself, it's gonna be hard. But when you say no, is there one person out there? And I like that thing too. You don't have to think about a crowd or something. Is there one person in the audience that I can help, who will connect with my story and will go, aha, whose life I will change? And that becomes really empowering. Terrific, mate. So we're almost at the top of the hour. What I'm going to end with is if this Charles right now, Charles V 2.0, would go back and talk to the Charles who was standing at the brink of it and not stepping in, afraid to step in, what would you say to that person?
Why? So I'm still. It's been so surreal, Javi, the past 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Um, and I think going back to that person, I think the main thing is I don't want to regret, you know, don't not do something that you'll regret later. And, you know, if I
Yeah,
didn't take these steps, if I didn't take these actions and I didn't go on this journey, I think I would have, you know, 60 years down the road been like, why didn't I, you know?
yeah,
And so this me right now would go back and said, you know, take those steps, um, ask of your life and tell your journey, and people will support you. People will resonate with your story, and that's what I've discovered. I think that Holland Museum,
yeah.
there's so many stories. Everybody has such a great
I
story,
know.
but they don't realize that if
Yeah,
they share it, people will listen and understand and empathize. You know,
yeah,
and that's been the biggest thing to me is I'm so
yeah,
glad I took this journey. I'm having so
yeah.
much fun, and there's I'm helping so many people take this journey now. I get contacts almost daily now. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, Charles, I heard of your story. I want
Oh,
to take
that's
that journey too.
crazy.
That
Yeah,
just happened this morning. I was like, yeah,
yeah,
this is how you take the journey.
yeah,
Come join me. It's fun.
yeah. So, folks, by the way, Charles and another friend of mine, Christian Osborne, you've heard them both now on my channel. They inspired me to change my website. And initially, it was all about training. It was like, you know, it kind of like what Charles said, right? Initially, in his first sales page, if you will, he was like, oh, Power BI. And that's what I was kind of doing on my website. But you know, that's just a tool. That's just a thing. I frankly don't really care about it. I care more about the people in the story. So I changed this, and I want you to go to learnpowerbi.com and read it when you get a chance, and send me an email, Avi at Avi Singh, and let me know what you think. And it was super scary. I'm like, am I doing something stupid? But it's folks like Charles who kind of inspire me. So that was really beautiful, Charles, and that reminded me of what I have kind of experienced and heard as well from others, where we often regret. Regret is usually associated with things we didn't do. You know what I mean? Rather
Mm-hmm.
than like, oh, you know, I shouldn't have done that, right? I mean, like, if you look back, I don't regret any time I changed my job, even if it didn't work out. I'm like, it led me to something else. And of course, I hear people as, oh, I should have stepped into Power BI 3 years ago. I'm like, well, so I'll use one of my brother's quotes, which is the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago and today. I mean, those are the two best times. You know? Yeah, it's like, guys, if you missed the boat 3 years ago, We're jumping right now, and it's waiting for you. Charles, thank you so much for that. So, folks, if you
Yep.
learned anything you knew, if you learned anything of value, if you felt inspired in any way, then put that in the chat box. Let us know. Who knows? I mean, based on what we hear, we might use that to decide the sessions we run in the future, and maybe even have Charles back on that. Charles, thanks again, mate. That was
Yeah,
incredible.
that was fun. Thank you.
Whew. All right, guys, that was really amazing. So we're gonna switch gears now. We're gonna do the Q&A. So let me push some levers here. I did see comments on our chat window where students are hanging out. So Kathy says, absolutely great info. Greg says, great job as always. Charles, that's great. And Paul Mack liked the tip about the video. And he's saying we do something similar and we put it on a SharePoint wiki. So guys, of course, I mean, you heard so much, and a lot of it was in context of like a actually, hold on, let me get my video up here. Was in the context of consulting, but a lot of these things apply um, even if you have a full-time job. So that's what Paul was sharing, that they do something like that similar and put it in their SharePoint wiki site. And he liked, I didn't realize it can be used to target pain points. So that's pretty good. So yeah, you can use some of these techniques to win internal clients, right? So you can definitely use that. Greg is saying, you've inspired me to publish my LinkedIn pillar article today. So folks, you did hear Charles talk about this pillar article thing, and that's something new that we've been working on. And so Charles himself and some of the other members we mentioned in this conversation, Greg, Mads, they're all part of a Pro Plus group. That's a small group, less than 20 people. We've been working. The goal is to help them become successful Power BI consultants, and so in that program, I talk a lot about social media, which I totally believe in. And of course, the example that I say is that I was 15 years, I was working in corporate America, and when the layoffs came around, I was still scared. But then after 2 years of social media, I can pretty much live the life that I want, right? I mean, I can create the life um, according to me, according to my own terms. So it is incredibly powerful, but we feel that there's also a shortcut, and that's the Pillarstone article. That's the one article that kind of makes that connection for you. I think, and I didn't even realize that that Pillarstone article can be a story, but of course Charles has demonstrated it definitely can. The idea in my head was that the Pillarstone article needed to be kind of a case study, kind of a testimonial. That hey, pain points. This is how I solved it for the customer. I can solve it for you. All right, let me check in on YouTube, and I'm gonna switch over and get to your questions. What did I miss? Jan saying, thanks, Charles. You're an inspiration for sure. Paul, I feel inspired. So Paul was asking, are you a single company or a team? So let's see. So Charles, are you still hanging on?
Yep.
So why don't you answer that? So what Paul is asking is, are you a single person company or a team, and how do you estimate the work needed, assuming the problem solution is clear?
So yeah, I kind of follow your agile, and I try to, the agile BI process, and
Yeah.
I pick a few things and say, it's hourly, and usually they understand that
Mm-hmm.
here's the initial estimate, but as the scope changes, as it always will, I kind of joke to them about that, but they
Yeah.
always know that it's going to change. So that's
Yeah.
how I typically scope is here's the initial estimate, but knowing it'll change a bunch. And then right now it's me, but I'm setting up a couple of people to help me with capacity.
Uh-huh.
That's in the works right now. But
Yeah.
yeah, to Paul's question, it started growing so fast that
Yeah.
I needed to get help with capacity.
Yeah. So that is for kind of Power BI, but you also have gotten some help, maybe not full time, but some of these support things, right? I mean, lawyer, accountant.
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
those are kind of there.
yeah.
Perfect.
So I think it's maybe it's Paul I talked to, but there are groups out there that support startups. So I joined Founder Co, which is a local group. I
Mm-hmm.
joined a group called Surge, and I joined, your group, which is Pro Plus, which is a bunch of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And that's been my support network. And through them, I find lawyers or accountants or people that can help me that I can trust.
Yeah.
And I get referrals. So that's been a huge help, is just finding that support network locally.
So I'm gonna write that down. So are those kind of groups that I could find in my neighborhood too, or are they just local to the community? The ones you mentioned,
Yeah,
Founders Co.
so I Founder Co is local to Holland, but I'm
Oh, okay.
starting to hear more and more starting up. Like Greg, I
Mm-hmm.
think just found some in Vancouver area. So if you start searching, there's groups starting to form because we're starting to realize there's more freelancers and more
Yeah.
startups,
Yeah.
and they haven't found each other before.
Yeah.
Um, I think the one Greg found was Grind. There we go. He just
Okay.
Startup Grind is a group
Startup
that's
grind.
I think started. Greg was saying in the U.S. It's expanding into Canada.
Yeah.
So there's more and more of these startup groups that are forming, and they're such a big help.
Yeah. So oddly enough, so folks, of course, man, I love this idea of like going in a group because there's only so much that I know, but together we're so much more powerful. So I've focused mostly on online, but clearly from Charles' story, the local connections can be incredibly powerful. And of course, you can blend the two. You can blend, and of course, that's what you heard from Charles. I mean, he's using LinkedIn, but he's also kind of yeah. You reminded me of another one which is in our area. It's called Thai. TIE, which is kind of a weird name, but yeah, that has chapters almost worldwide, I think. So that is another one, tie.org. And I was taking my notes off to the side, but we're going to transfer our notes to our Talk Power BI document. And if you have signed up for the Insiders Club, then you would have access to this. Or if you are inside our class, then of course, wherever you go to join our Talk Power BI calls, it has links to the notes and, well, the Power BI files as well. So that's where, folks, you're going to find kind of some of the notes that I took if you want to cheat off of that. Perfect. All right, so let's see. So let's do officially switch to Q&A. So folks on the phone, does anybody have a Power BI question? Well, actually, it doesn't have to be a Power BI question. You can even ask a kind of a career question or something if you like. But
Hey
is there
guys,
something you want to ask?
hey,
Sahil,
this is
right?
Sahil. Yeah,
Hey, Sahil, how you doing, man?
I'm good. By the way, Charles, that was seriously inspiring. So if I hadn't just started my journey, I would have left my job right now.
Oh my God, that's great! Oh
All right.
gosh.
So when you were
Thanks,
talking
Sahil.
about, no, to be very honest, it was really inspiring.
I'm gonna write that down.
You so I was thinking, wait, should I leave? Then I realized, wait, it's been 1 month, right? I should hold
Yeah,
on. Yeah, I
yeah,
should hold
no, yeah, you're in a great spot, man. You got a lot of runway ahead of you, but clearly that speaks to the how incredible Charles was, and yeah, that was pretty cool. All right, man.
Okay, let me ask my question. So, when you were still at your firm, when you were still employed, did you feel the need that just knowing Power BI wasn't enough? Did you ever have to like venture out to other tools or other languages or some other supporting tools to facilitate, the support you were providing to the other teams?
All right,
Because
so yeah,
yeah,
so Charles, yeah, that's to you.
Yeah. So so I did have to expand, especially when you're inside and your scope has to be beyond. And that's one of the struggles with, you can't just sell the data modeling. You can't just focus. And so I did. We expanded to SharePoint lists. We expanded to, some of the connectors because each department was struggling with using maybe Google Sheets, Excel, how to get the data in structured. We even expanded into the ERP system
Hmm.
and how to get to structure the data going in there. We expanded into Power Apps. how to get data into SharePoint lists. I mean, it was so broad, and I felt like I was spreading my resources too thin. So that's one of the joys of starting your own business, is you can really have control more of the scope and build a box around. It's like, hey, this is what I do, and I can really add value so quickly here. Some of the other stuff is going to take a long time, but you can kind of set that expectation more when you have that under your control.
Yeah. One thing I'll add to this is that I feel that the biggest challenge for anybody stepping into this is can be overwhelmed, where you step into it like, oh, there's so much. And it frankly is not something that goes away, right? I mean, there are definitely periods quite often where I feel the same way. So that challenge is there. One idea that has helped me is what I call the push versus pull approach, where some things need to be pushed to you, and I feel this is kind of the core concepts and kind of the core knowledge, and everything else you can pull to yourself as you need. And oddly enough, this idea was born out of handling communication. So the idea that you only want some things to be pushed to you on a phone. Only you should really limit the things that pop up and can kind of grab your attention, either on your phone or on your desktop. So you should really limit those things, kind of really have that focused. Everything else you can pull to yourself. So WhatsApp, I don't think people use it here that much. I'm from India, so of course WhatsApp is huge in India. So I'm part of these WhatsApp groups, but I don't want them pushing notifications to me. I'm going to go pull that to me when I'm ready, right? So when I have a break, then I'll go check all the messages. So it born out of there. But I think it applies with kind of learning as well. So always you're going to have your core. So exactly what Charles talked about, where he's going to define his scope. But I'm pretty sure he's going to see that in his business too. That even if he defines the scope, once he steps in with a client, they'll say, oh, I have, you help us with this, great. You're one project in. And then they say, oh, by the way, connect to this. And it's going to be something new for him. But that's the part where the pull comes in. So if you have the core knowledge and the core expertise, then you should always stay true to that. Like my core. So of course, Power BI now is so big, you got to define your core in there. So of course, my core is kind of the query and the DAX and so forth, and even there, kind of the data modeling, right? So that's my core. I'm gonna stay true to that, but if I'm engaging with the client, I can always pull stuff to me. I can pull, oh, how do you do a custom connector if I need to, or something new. So maybe that would help, Sahil.
So Sahil, one other thing, I'm starting to develop relationships with other freelancers now that specialize in certain other things. And that's been helpful, because then I can tap them as, I can tell my clients like, hey, I don't know this per se. I know the data modeling and the Power BI, but hey, I got somebody over here. We'll bring them on board and they can really help. What do you think of that? And then you kind of transfer that trust over to them, and you have a special person to come in who's focused on it.
Yeah, and of course that's easier.
It's a very nice point.
Yeah, that should be easier within an organization. I don't know easier, but yeah, that's
I was thinking
possible.
it from the standpoint of the organization that I might not know everything, so I know SQL, but I don't know SQL as an in-depth. So if I was thinking that if I needed help, I would definitely approach someone, and it could be I don't have to take on everything myself, right? I can work on a project together. So that's a good point.
Yeah, perfect. All right, great. Did that help?
Yeah, that helped. Oh, by the way, in the chat, Paul has a follow-up question on my question.
Oh, okay. I'll look.
It was covered just now. Thanks, Sahil. Okay. It was, have you hit any walls, and from a technology standpoint, and how did you deal with it? And yeah, you covered it with sharing the love with other freelancers.
Yeah, I've hit a lot of walls. In Power BI, you hit walls almost every day with some of the DAX measures, and then you're like overwhelmed by the DAX, and then you get hit with like an ERP wall, and you're like, whoa, what do I do there? So yeah, I'm starting to build this infrastructure of a support network, and I've learned to say I don't know. I think that's another fear that I didn't mention earlier, and maybe for the other consultants that are looking into consultants, but to say, hey, I don't know, I'm going to look it up. Will you work with me and wait for a little bit while I research this, or get somebody on the team to help? Once you set that expectation, a lot of times they're like, Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I understand, Charles, because you can't know everything. So
yeah,
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 it's
yeah.
it's that fear of saying I don't know is scary
Yeah.
for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's hilarious, man. Because I remember when I started out consulting, of course, we would do a lot of remote consulting. In fact, that's what I prefer. You can serve clients all over the world. You can be anywhere in the world. But I would be doing screen sharing, and we would be working on a model, and I would have to open Google to look something up, and I felt kind of embarrassed. But of course, I realized that hey, they get it, and yeah, they're not expecting you to know everything.
Yeah.
As long as you solve the problem, yeah, they don't, So yeah, that's okay. That's a good one. That's a good tip. Terrific. Let's see if you can take a question from our YouTube chat. Mm, all right, so Michael is here. Michael is also part of our Learn Power BI family, and he's, I think, commenting on something that we talked about earlier, where it's better to show than tell. And he's saying, I agree that you use their data to show them something. Um, yeah, that's always more effective. Uh, yeah, so he's asking what kind of private data people come up with. I'm not really sure, Michael. I mean, it just depends on kind of what their business is. So I think it's whatever data they're dealing with. I'm not sure. Maybe you wanted to talk about like data sources. Mm. And Hyan is saying, I'm new to Power BI. Do I wait to finish the 6 month course before deciding to start my business? That's a good question. Um, so, Charles, what would your answer be?
Yeah, so I don't know if I heard it on yours, but I think it was you, Avi. You said, do you have the technical ability? Do you have the passion for it?
Yeah.
And I think, are you ready to take the punches? There's going to be hard times,
Hmm.
but if you can look ahead and be ready for this. So my recommendation is when you're comfortable technically, and if that's through the course or whatever, you just kind of know at that point, because you'll be talking to people and then you can see the data patterns and you can solve it and you're confident at that point. So
Yeah.
your classes, Avi, I think I went through them, the videos 4 times before I got to that level where I was like, okay, now I'm ready to go. So
Yeah.
I guess that's my advice is, when you're ready, you kind of know.
Wow. That's odd because yeah, I will kind of disagree with Charles there. I feel that we our fears always kind of get in our way, and the challenge is that fears don't come up as fears, right? So
Mm,
and so yeah, so you don't say to yourself that, oh, I'm not doing this because I'm afraid. They come up with 1001 extremely logical reasons, extremely logical, and you say such good stuff to yourself, right? And of course you do say things like that oh, I'm still learning. There's no way I can do this, right? I mean, yeah, once I'm out of learning mode, when I get to that point, then I'll do it. But for a lot of people, I think Charles may be different that way because something clicked, and I think I know what that is that yeah, they stay stuck in this mode where they're almost like just learning forever. They never feel ready.
mm,
But I think what triggered in Charles was that he started helping others. So a lot of people don't even help others. They wouldn't take on Power BI projects. They wouldn't go beyond to other groups, let alone people outside of the company. But Charles talked about his experience, right, where he saw the impact, he saw the reaction, and I think you need to seek that out. You really need to seek that out because that is gonna validate you. So actually this is good. So Charles, so initially you were talking about one of your initial meeting where they said that, oh, stop selling, but their second tip was to validate it, right?
yeah.
So let's go with that. So folks, you need to validate it. So I really feel that it's not gonna come to you because your fears are gonna get in your way, and it's gonna come in as really logical. Where you're gonna say, no, I can't do this because, and believe me, people, you can list out a lot of reasons like, no, clearly it's not a good idea. But so don't say that. So I like that. I like that. It's a great question. So a lot of times people think of these things as really black and white, right? Really absolute. And I want to take a really different example to talk about this, where let's say you had a disagreement with your with your spouse or your girlfriend, right, or your partner, right? And it's odd that. when you're having a fight, argument, discussion, whatever, you have really extreme feelings where you kind of, the thoughts that run in your head is like, oh, this person doesn't love me, which is like really extreme. And we don't stop there, do we? We go to the next level and say, this person never loved me or is never going to love me, something like that. We make it so extreme where it isn't, right? So my therapist taught me this concept, this visual analogy, which I love. And she talked about, think about a dock out in the water, out in the sea, out in the lake somewhere, right? And it has these wood slats lined up. And sometimes when they get kind of soaked and wet, they expand and they get closer, but sometimes it dries out and they go apart. What she was trying to tell me was relationships are not black and white. It's not, oh, she loves me not. That's BS. They don't work that way. We're kind of like those wooden slats. They come close, they come apart. All right, so different analogy, but in here, we think in some absolute terms. It's either I have a full-time job or I'm out there on my own as a consultant. And I want you to delay that, right? I mean, forget about that for a second. I liked the advice that Charles got, which is like, just validate it. Does it even feel right to you? Who knows? I mean, maybe we're a bunch of geeks and, you see us up here and we get so excited about Power BI. Maybe that's not you, right? So validate that first of all, right? So you're going to validate the three things that I've talked about is, so Charles is referring to that. So how do you, so this is, I don't know, let's call it the golden circle, right? So golden circle, and it is shown as overlapping circles where there's something that you enjoy, right? So, you feel passionate about and you're good at. So if I am passionate about basketball, I know I'm not going to get anywhere, right? So you got to be good at it too. And the third thing is also critical was the world needs it. And by the way, this comes from one of the best career guidebooks I have ever read. I'm gonna buy a copy for my son. Actually, I should have already. He's 15 now, and I love this book because it's a comic book. Believe it or not, it's a manga book, and it has really good advice. I mean, of course, it for one, it works because it's simple, right? So Johnny Bunko, and let's see if we can flip through some pages. So yeah, you can see, yeah, it's a manga book, and it conveys this idea that this golden circle, right, where you have, your passion, you're something good at. So you're going to be passionate about a lot of things. I mean, Charles has a whole list of them, right? But then, so there's a circle where, so you're passionate about, but you're also good at, and then the world also needs it, and you find that spot. And man, that should become your life's quest. By the way, so I talked about my webpage, and sometimes, man, it's frankly doing up a website, and sometimes when you're talking to others, stuff comes out which you don't even realize it's there. So prepping for this session with Charles and talking to my friend Christian, who's been featured on our channel as well. He has a really inspiring story. This one, blue collar, blue chip. So he was working in a factory, didn't have enough money. So imagine an assembly line, and frankly, I've never done a job like that. I've always sat in front of a computer. But he was working in a factory, assembling whatever plants, whatever that happens in an assembly line, right? And not having enough money to fuel up his car and all that stuff. And man, now he's doing really well. He runs his own. He works at Microsoft, doing Power BI analytics. Also runs his own company, does consulting and all that stuff, right? So that's his story. I got tracked, but anyway, so inspired by Christian and Charles, what I realized was that I feel like I know I always used to say, even when I started off with Power BI, I used to use this line where I would say Power BI is my excuse to change people's lives, right? That's just my way to get in. And I feel like, I think this is the closest I feel I've gotten to kind of my quest, if you will. And I love the word quest. I don't know, it makes you think of video games, exciting adventures, not work, right? I mean, as Charles talked about, like, this is retirement, right? So I don't know, if you're not ready for retirement, then maybe think of it as a life's quest. And oh boy, I'm actually really glad I actually used that word. So yeah, I'm obsessed with this idea, like, what makes a leader? What makes them step out, take that plunge, do that thing, and then carry on. Can it be hard? Yes, but it can also be rewarding. But yeah, it's not for everybody. So what is that recipe? What is that mix? And can you create them, right? I mean, is a leader born or are they created? Now, of course, I'll admit that I lean heavily towards that the created side, because I feel like I'm an example of that. Oh shoot, what happened there? Anyway, so I feel like my quest, and again, you always refine that, but right now, it's the closest I've gotten to what I'm really after, which is to understand what that recipe is myself, study it, understand it, and then turn around and teach it to others, right? As many as I can. Cool. And I'll admit I completely forgot what we were talking about. So
Oh,
should you wait? Yeah, Charles, go ahead.
yeah. So I have one more little story to add to this. So when I did some validation when I started out, and
Yeah.
one of the stories was I was pitching too hard. I was selling the tool.
Uh huh.
I also remember I was going out to small business owners, like friends of mine,
Yeah.
and asking them, "Hey, do you have data you can share?" And I remember two or three. They were just too small, and they're like, "Ooh, I don't really see a need for this." And I was
Uh.
just hit. I was like, "Oh man, I have this tool, I have this passion, but there's people saying they don't need it." But what I
Hmm.
had to realize later was they were in the wrong market. They were in, they only had a single data source. They could use Excel.
Hmm.
And when that realization came forward, it's like, no, no, I should be talking with medium and large businesses that have lots of disconnected data. That's when, I almost let that, stop me. Like, because I was talking to the wrong, like, company size, people with the wrong types of data. So you got to be a little bit careful when validating too. And I think one
Yeah.
part of the golden circle is the ability just to continue,
Yeah.
just learn from every failure. Every time
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
somebody says no, it's not a personal thing. I think
Yeah.
you taught me that, Avi, is it's not
Yeah.
a personal thing. It's maybe they're in the wrong market, and or
I
maybe your
know.
pitch has to
Yeah.
change.
That's a good point. Uh. Well. Uh. Yeah, that's a good point. So we do take it a very personally as a judgment on ourselves. Um, yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Terrific. So Hiren, do you start your business now or wait? I'll say let's go with that. You gotta validate it, and of course you don't need to wait to validate it. In fact, you must not wait to validate it. Validate it as quickly as you can. So I sometimes in Power BI when I'm solving problems, I would like exaggerate it, right? So to kind of figure out. So Power BI often there's no black and white in Power BI either. There's no right or wrong. There are a few different ways to do it. So sometimes you're gonna figure out that which is the right path, which is the right path for me in my situation. And what I do is I exaggerate it. And I'll say, okay, cool. We're considering this path and this path. How would these paths look like if we had, and whatever the problem we're looking at, exaggerate a little bit. If we had 10,000 rows, 50,000 rows, 500,000 rows, 5 million rows, right? So, and you kind of keep going, and usually you say, okay, well, so, oh gosh, lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? It was something good. It'll come to me. So you validated. Oh, I've totally lost what I said. Anyway, so validated. That's still good advice. And yeah, now I know what I was talking about. So I exaggerate this a little bit, but what I say is, so people say, oh, I'm gonna help others when I'm good enough, and this becomes an infinite loop. They're stuck in it because they're never good enough, and it's always we know, there's stuff that we don't know, and the higher you go up, like I don't, I'm not sure if I call myself an expert. Frankly, I stopped thinking of myself as a Power BI pro initially because that gave me kind of anxiety. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be a Power BI pro and I'm supposed to know everything. And then I've cast that aside. And the way I think about that is that my goal is to make others a Power BI pro. And whew, that's like, whew, pressure off of me, right? So we always get stuck in that loop. So what I say to somebody who's maybe liable to fall into that is this. If you discovered Power BI today, then you can help those people who haven't discovered Power BI yet, right? So think about that, right? There are so many people out there who have no idea, who are stuck, who are in a lot of pain, and now you can help all of them, right? So yeah, that's how low you need to go on whatever the imaginary pyramid you have, right? Where you're thinking that, oh, if I'm going to be, at the top or somewhere here, then I'm ready. Well, no, not really. I mean, you just help the people who are a few steps below, right? And there are lots of opportunities in Power BI. Somebody who has a million plus rows and struggling with an Excel, you can help them. Somebody who does an army of VLOOKUPs, if you learn how to do relationships, you can help them. So it's not whatever you imagine. So when we invited people to Pro Plus program, what I said to them was, however much Power BI you think you need, you actually need less than that, right? So yeah, I'll go with that. So wherever you are, I think you can validate it. Just figure out who you can kind of find and serve, and kind of validate that. Did you enjoy that experience? Did it come easy to you? And did they seem interested? But I liked what Charles said as well, that you gotta kind of take that with a pinch of salt, right? So like, you also need to watch out for other things where they kind of my ideal audience or something, maybe that was off, and then of course you kind of keep going, right? You try it again. So if you have 6 months to complete your course, then you have a lot of time to kind of experiment that in the meanwhile. So do that, and we'll look forward to hearing from you there. Okay, let's so we switch back and forth, YouTube and the phone. So let's go to the phone again. Let's see if anybody has any question there. General, Power BI, anything.
I guess another question for Charles.
Yeah, go for it.
So did you go through the Learn Power BI starters course?
Yeah, so I did. I went through, well, I went through the free version first, and then I signed up, and then for the, what do you call the middle version, Avi?
Well, so there's the free tutorial on YouTube, and the next step is the Learn Power BI program.
Yep.
That we just
And then I spent quite a bit of time, actually, Sahil, on the Facebook group, answering questions and working with people who were posting questions. And then I went into the pro after that. So I've gone through the Avi's funnel.
Yeah.
Oh, so since you mentioned pro, Avi, would you speak more on the pro? I saw your video on the group today, and
yes.
want to know more about that as well.
Yeah. So, folks, this is a journey I have taken with my students, and I've had some hangups about it, but those are my internal blocks. I really think that this is a good model. So the Learn Power BI program, that's our main program, and the idea behind that is to give you that 20% core concepts that takes you 80% of the way. And that's absolutely true, right? I mean, and of course we have 6 modules, focus on the core concepts, start with the overview, zero to dashboard, then go to query editor, relationships, DAX, visualization, Power BI platform. And of course, initially that was the only thing that was there. That was the only thing. And that spawned folks like Justina Bucks and Pam Baker, who have incredible success and are an inspiration for me. But then the next thing that happened was that people kept coming back to me and said, Avi, that's great. We're getting a lot of value out of this, but what about the rest of the journey? I mean, we do want to continue on the rest of the journey beyond the core 20%. So the pro level was born. Now, unfortunately, it didn't get much love, and there were some mental blocks inside of me which kept me from what I see now as it held me back from serving our Learn Power BI family fully. So, we all have our mental blocks, and folks who saw the Talk Power BI, I was like crying my eyes out talking about this. And well, basically the short version is it was the classic imposter syndrome which kind of held me back. But anyway, that's I'm past that, because I'm not focused on me. This is not about me. This is about everybody else and who I can help. And as I said earlier, is there one person out there who I can help with this? I think there is. So the pro level, we're going to do advanced content, and there's going to be one extra call is there, and this is going to be a group call, but it's going to be a private call, not on YouTube. So a little bit of a private setting, and right. So let me see if I can bring up the document that I had there. Oh, there we go. Where is the pro? There we go. So since so right now I feel really excited about this vision, and in the pro level, what we're doing is this is the vision, and it's going to take some time to evolve. Or power patterns, and this is just things which like slowly changing dimensions, calendar table, that sometimes can be solved in DAX, but also in Query Editor, and we're going to look at it kind of in general. And then go deeper into Query Editor, go deeper into DAX, go deeper into visualization, real-world exercises, industry-specific projects. So the idea here is that over time, build up a library of maybe one is focused on finance, another focused on HR, and then sales, and then marketing, and then I don't know, supply chain and all that, and then tips and tricks and masterclass library, things like that. So that's kind of the vision. So that's for somebody who wants to continue more on the technical path. That's the pro level, and of course, the pro plus. This is a small group program, going to be a group of less than 20 people, which is where this is beyond Power BI, right? So Power BI is covered in these two, kind of the Learn Power BI program and the advanced stuff in pro level. But then in this one, we go beyond Power BI, and we talk about how to establish a social presence, how to get clients, and how to work with a remote client and things like that. So this, in itself, this doesn't have any Power BI content. And that's for somebody who's focused on becoming a Power BI consultant. So yeah, that's the levels. Does that help, Sahil? If you have any other questions, you
It
can ask me.
does. It does. It does. So I'm actually just started with the Learn Power BI course, and I'm just being greedy. I just wanted to know more what's out there. Good stuff.
Yeah. All right. Terrific. Yeah. So folks, to give you a bit of the history, I mean, this one when we started, and of course I was afraid of doing this for so long. I would, of course, give myself very logical reasons. I'm like, no, the world doesn't need it. And I would say that who am I to do it? I mean, there are so many successful consultants out there. I am nothing. I'm a nobody. But I'm glad I got over that. And it took me some tries. So Charles, of course, talked about kind of validating it, and we ran a beta and so forth. And initially when I started, there were actually two paths. So the two names that I mentioned, Justina Bucks and Pam Baker, they've both been featured on my channel. Go check them out in our success stories. Christian Osborne is there as well. So if you scroll down, somewhere in there, you're going to find the success stories. Not this one. Yeah, there we go. Right, so Justina Bucks and Pam Baker have both been featured here. They were one of the earliest students in the program, and Justina Bucks took the consulting route, and of course, well, I remember getting an email from her maybe about 6 to 8 months after she had joined the program, and so she definitely had moments of struggle, right? As Charles talked about it, you got to be ready for that. You got to brace yourself for that, and keep your goals around you, keep your family around you to help you support through that stuff. So she had those moments, but she sent an email saying, "Hey, Avi, I'm on track to 4x my annual income." So that was Justina Bucks. Obviously, really impressive. I'm like, cool, keep going, right? I mean, obviously she didn't stop there, and then there is Pam Baker, who is really amazing, and she kind of went from fly on the wall in her company, in her words, just an accountant for 15 years. And when she said that, I mean, I could, those moments where you can see your life flash by, I could kind of see her version of that, where I have lived in that, where you're in the data dungeon stuck cranking out reports, and you're not really being noticed. So when she used the word just, I'm like, oh boy, that encapsulates so much, right? So just an accountant for 15 years to now she's been like a worldwide celebrity inside Volvo. People seek her out. So initially when I started this program, it was actually called 6 Figures Power BI Professional. And the idea was really simple. The idea was to create more Justina Bucks and more Pam Bakers. Now, I realize that there is a lot of common ground between these two paths. There are a lot of things which both should be doing. I feel social media is one of those things. I feel telling a story is one of those things. So that is common to both. But there are also some other points which are kind of different. So I've decided to focus more on the Justina Bucks right now. So that's the Pro Plus, 6 figures Power BI consultant. I feel like I want to come back and serve the other path as well. So folks who want to excel in their company, I have a lot of thoughts and ideas around that too. And I want to come back and serve that. And again, now that I've found or gotten closer to my life's purpose, maybe I'll refine it. But now that I understand that this is what I'm studying, right? I'm studying what makes a Power BI leader, and then how can I just break it down and teach it to others. So of course, one aspect is, so I'm going to do both. I'm not going to stop, right? So I'm gonna keep focusing on this Pro Plus program on the consultant path, the Justina Bucks path, but I'm going to come back and focus on the other path as well, the Pam Baker path, which is how do you excel inside the company. And of course, Sile and I got together we do the personal welcome call, and I had shared some tips with him on that. So, but anyway, all right. So that's kind of the short on that. So cool. So let's switch back to YouTube. So folks, if you have any question, just type that in. I was gonna say something else. So I'll wait for you a little bit and learnpowerbi.com. There we go. And while I'm waiting for you there, I'll just mention the highlights here. So Power BI leaders, and I started off with like what does not make a leader, and I wanted to kind of bust some myths around it, right? So I mean, sometimes people say that, oh, Avi, yeah, they made somebody else in charge of Power BI, and I'm like, fuck that, you know? I mean, who cares, right? So, and I have this line which has inspired me, which is ask for forgiveness, not permission. And they had told me to shut down shop. Oh shoot, I apologize. Squarespace keeps doing that. So they shot me down. They told me that this was inside Microsoft. They said, Avi, no more Power BI. You're done with it, right? And of course, I didn't listen to them. Actually, I wouldn't say of course. I really struggled with it because, of course, I was scared I'm going to lose my job. And I remember I would drive back home in a blur, in a haze, where I couldn't think beyond that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, right? I mean, I can't do Power BI, and I felt so like I couldn't breathe, right? I mean, it was because obviously I was excited about this stuff. And the route that I took finally was, I'm like, hell with it. I'm just going to do it, right? So I'm done asking for permission. So I just went around the back. I just didn't tell anybody. And I found the smallest team there was, the Latin America sales team. There were like one employee and one consultant. And they didn't have any resources. And they really struggled. Everybody else had, like, sometimes the Europe team had a dedicated person doing the reports. The sales team, like, oh, yeah, we do our own reports. Latin America couldn't afford that. And so, yeah, they were hurting. And I helped them. That was the start of my journey there. So yeah, so you definitely don't need a title, and of course now I know that well that has kind of sunk in, and even more because yeah, I've seen CFOs, I've seen people in call centers. By the way, both have been featured in our YouTube success stories. There is a story out there of somebody who worked at the call center, and they called him up at the headquarters and they said, hey, we hear you doing this new Power BI thing. Can you teach us how? Can you show us how? Can you tell us how we can use it? So that's the first myth. And then, of course, I talked about it briefly earlier, was that people are so obsessed with technical skills. Frankly, I hate it. And I also hate that I feel like the industry perpetuates this myth. Oops. Oh, shoot. Right? So because you go out to the blogs and all this stuff, and there's this wizardry, right? I mean, this oh gosh, you can do this in M. Is that valuable? Maybe, but I feel it's definitely not what makes a leader. And the last one is kind of personal, but I feel just because you're successful, if you earn a lot of money, you got a lot of subscribers on YouTube, I don't think that makes you a leader, because we all know people who are successful and we would never hang out with them. I mean, they're just not good people. So they're definitely not leaders. I'll let you read what does make a leader. Cool. So let's see, something came in on YouTube. So Jen is asking, why would Microsoft stop you from using a Microsoft product? Yeah, guys, if it can happen inside Microsoft, it can happen anywhere. They just want you to go through a different department or something. Yeah, exactly that. So basically, when you do this new stuff, you're bringing in change, right? So hold on, let me just complete the notes here. Power BI journey. 47, so 3. Oops, didn't work. Oh, it didn't work either. Hold on, guys. Okay, got it. So Jen is asking, why was Avi stopped doing Power BI inside Microsoft? Well, the whole thing is about change, and change can be threatening. And maybe I'm smarter now. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, frankly, organizations can have a lot of red tape, can have a lot of different personalities. People live in a lot of fear. And of course, Power BI kind of liberated me from that. So I was the kind of guy who, when I was told to transition a report to somebody else, I would tell them everything, but just miss out, just forget to mention a crucial step, because I wanted to feel important, right? I felt bad that they were having me, give that up or something. So I would miss a step, and then I would feel important. I would feel valued, like I was needed when they were stuck and they were frustrated and they called me and said, Avi, I can't do this, man. Sorry, I know you showed me, but I'm stuck here. And I'll say, oh yeah, do this. And I mean, of course, now I feel so guilty, because most of the time these people were really nice. They never called me out on that. They never said, dude, this is BS, man. You never showed me the step. They were like, oh, Avi, thanks for help. So, I was a complete idiot. And a lot of people operate in that fear, right, where they would put their own interests before anybody else. And of course, Power BI kind of changed that for me. But that's the environment that I was in. That's the environment that you can do, right? So people kind of fear change. And of course, one of my friends who has also been featured on the Power BI Success Stories, Reed Havens, he had this quote, is that, well, people actually do not fear change. And man, at the first time I said it, I'm like, what, dude? What is this knowledge? So he said they fear loss. And you need to figure out the loss that they fear. And it could be really simple. They're just afraid that they're going to lose their jobs. But there could be other fears that you're going to make them look bad. And I was doing all of that, right? So this was me, Avi, and I was running essentially a shadow BI operation all by myself, right? I was like the one-man army. And it was more accurate. It was more timely by a huge magnitude. Right, so this was daily versus delayed, believe it or not, by 2 months. So you had to wait 2 months to look at your data. So it was daily. It was more accurate, and of course, it was more agile. I mean, somebody would come to me and say, "Hey, Avi, man, I'm using a report, but there's this other data set," and I would say, "Stop, take a seat." And I would have them sit down. I say, okay, where's the data? Yeah, connect to it. Yeah, can you log in for me? Pull it in. Do a quick measure. Do a quick visual. Is this what you want? I was like, no, I want this. Yeah, you can do it later. No, just stay there. Cool. Now sit down. And yeah, so it was, yeah, so I was making them look bad, really bad. And yeah, I was not, I was very headstrong at that time. I would like to think I wouldn't do things that way. I was like, I don't know. Yeah, I was a different mindset. So I was like butting heads with, and of course, so I was going against this BI team, man, which had, I don't know, they had at least like, they may have had 10 people, somewhere like offshore in India, so they're lower cost maybe, but I know in total they were spending millions of dollars, and get this, in maintenance. I have no idea how long man, this was a robust system. This is the old school, right? I mean, this is the old school. You kind of started with ETL, and there was this SSIS layer, and you had like a data mart, and then that fed into a data warehouse. and that fed into some kind of SSRS reports and all that stuff, and there was this whole change management system, and everybody went in with a begging bowl and said, oh, can we have this, can you change that chart and add this thing, and they would say, oh yeah, you're in the queue. Right? And oh, sorry, you didn't make the cut line. There was this cut line that they would say, oh yeah, and there was this thing that I read. I don't remember the source, but like how long does it take on average to add a column? And this is something that is like already there, and the answer was like ridiculous, like 7 weeks or something. So this was the whole thing. They were spending millions. I don't know how much it was spent to build this system. Who knows? Right? So this is what I was up against, and so of course they didn't like me. Yeah, they wanted to completely shut me down. So they did a big meeting. They brought everybody there, and man, I actually feel emotional even thinking about it, because when they had the big meeting, I was kind of silly, man. I was so naive. I thought that was my big moment. That was when they would acknowledge that, Avi, man, this is good. We appreciate what you're doing. You're making us look better. So I thought that was that. And I went and bought a box of cookies as, I don't know, like a peace offering or something, right? And of course it wasn't that. In that meeting they told me to, yeah, you're done, right? You're not doing this anymore. And of course that was the phase when I would drive home in a haze. I'm glad I didn't meet with an accident, and I would drive in a haze, because to me, and again, I think we exaggerate things, right? I mean, where we do this black and white, and of course when stuff like this happens, immediately you only think about the two choices, right? Black and white. Again, black and white. Where you say either I can do what I love and lose my job, right? Or I abandon my dreams, right? So, and if we think about the stacks. So, folks, you've heard about the mindset coach that I work with, and the first time I mentioned mindset coach, or one of the times I mentioned it, somebody said, "Oh, they're bloodsuckers," and I'm like, "Dude, I don't know. I mean, Ashley has been godsend. If not for her, I wouldn't have gathered the courage to do half of the stuff. She is almost single-handedly responsible for tricking me into doing the Pro Plus. So she tricked me into it, and she said, "Okay, what if you just announce it?" And of course, once you announce it, I kind of followed through. So what she talked to me was when I'm stuck in some loop, and I would share this with you guys too. When you're stuck in a loop and it feels like the end of the world, or you feel horrible about yourself, and we say such horrible things to ourselves, and you find yourself saying those things to yourself, like, I'm so bad, I can't do this, I'm stuck, and I'm never going to get anywhere. Then what she says is change your vantage point, right? So she doesn't say good or bad, right or wrong, right? Black or white, right? None of those words, good or bad, right or wrong. She just says, Avi, is there another vantage point you can look at it from? And of course, she's so visual, so she has me visualize that. So she says, imagine your problem, whatever you're looking at, whatever you're facing, is down in that valley, right? Down in that valley, it's there. You can see it, and oh, it's horrible. Cool, you see it, great. But you realize that that's down in the valley, and you're on just one of the mountain peaks. There are other mountain peaks. Why don't you, kind of visually see yourself kind of moving from this mountain peak to the other one, and say, what does that look? Does that look any different? And yeah, I mean, I would literally she would be talking me through this, and I would have my eyes closed, looking at the problem down in the valley, and like, oh yeah, well, I guess, yeah. I mean, I didn't think about this, and crazy things come out of that, right? So of course, and there's no one solution. I mean, you could have come up with a different solution, but of course, when I stepped, so I didn't have Ashley back then, but I'm glad I figured it out, which was like, my solution was, I'm done asking for permission. Now, unfortunately, folks, I made the mistake of sharing this story with my kids. Because now, guess what I get, right? I mean, they do something, and I was like, dude, guys, come on. And they're like, hey, Dad, you said asking for forgiveness is better than asking for permission. I'm like, oh, shit. So, yeah, they're not ready for it. But that's what I did. So I went to the smallest team, and they had two things going on for them. Actually, so this was, I forget who, this was one of our Learn Power BI students as well. And folks, I mean, I feel so lucky. I feel like I'm the centerpiece, and I'm learning from like all of these amazing people around me. And they said, gosh, who was it? Maybe it was one of the Talk Power BI sessions, but we were talking about the first project. Like, how do you, like, and they said, you got to, oh, actually, I know who it was. It was Anthony Lipinski. And let's pull him up on our success stories. He was featured recently. So he deployed Power BI within his organization. Let's go. Yeah, I really think we should move the success stories up. They're kind of lost in there. So Anthony talked about that. So I said, who is the best group to work with? Is it finance, or is it this, is it that? And he said, well, it depends. And then he used the word chase the pain, right? So find somebody who's in pain, and they're going to roll out the red carpet for you. They're going to work with you. They're going to make time for you. Otherwise, like the Europe team, so this was the Latin America sales team. There was the Europe team. They were not feeling the pain, right? So because again, they had dedicated one resources and one person was just cranking out reports. I mean, that person possibly was feeling the pain, but because of them, the rest of the team wasn't. By the way, let me know if you've been in that spot where, I mean, you're kind of doing all the heavy lifting and you feel the pain, but nobody else even recognizes it, right? So if I had gone to them, it wouldn't have worked because the team in general didn't feel the pain. So I went to the Latin America sales team. They were kind of hurting. They looked bad in all the team meetings because everybody had these reports, and they maybe had like a number. It's like, oh yeah, we missed our target. Sorry, no insight, nothing. So I worked with them, built a dashboard, iterated. And then Europe, by the way, was the most resistant because these are the guys who were had a dedicated resource. So the next one was, I think, Asia Pacific. So I mean, this was only bottom up, right? So it started with LATAM, and the next bigger team was Asia Pacific. So I think the person was Sukhdev, and so he saw this report and said, oh, okay, I mean, well, can you do it for us? And so worked with them, and then North America, and that was Shanna Carmody. And I like Shanna because he always reminded me to smile. And I get that. I mean, I get so zoned in. I'm like, oh, I have this focus. Like, Avi, come on, man, smile. I'm like, okay, cool. Shanna, I'm going to smile. So that was her. And then finally, so Europe, man, it took them a long time, but, and I didn't really even push them. I mean, they eventually realized that, man, we worked so hard to update this report, and Avi has it. And initially, there were some data quality issues, numbers wouldn't match, and so forth. And we worked through that. Sometimes finding issues on their side, not ours, and that's okay. And then they realized that, man, we're doing so much work, and Avi's data is more accurate. And it's just ready, it's there, it matches our data. So they said, okay, fine, we're gonna just let that go. And sometime after that, the BI team was let go. So well, I mean. Should I feel bad about them losing their jobs? Yeah, of course I do. I mean, I wish there was a different way. But I believe in the path. And of course, yeah. All right, cool. So let's see what came in. Fear of loss. Yeah. Thank Reed Havens for that. Send him a note. Yeah. So. Ben is asking a question. How do I know? It's kind of a version of what we were talking about earlier. Let me read some of the other comments. Feeling lost. Jen Nabel saying, I think that's about to happen to me. I like his story, and I'll continue to ask for forgiveness. Yep, I'm a huge. Frankly, Charles has displayed more courage than I think I have. I generally lean towards kind of flying under the radar because I did that for a long time, at least within the organization. Where I don't want to officially say anything. I mean, if they would ask me, I would actually, I would like shrug my shoulders like, well, Power BI report? No, man, not me. You got the wrong guy. So I flew under the radar for a long time. They must have done that by themselves or something. Yeah. Talk to Eduardo in LATAM. Silas saying, okay, he's got to go. So today's call is seriously a gem. So again, thanks to Charles. We'll watch the recording later. Yep. Sometimes you got to watch these things again to let all of that sink in. Thanks, Charles, for sharing the story. Cool. Paul liked that too. Really awesome. Okay, cool. So so Ben, I'm gonna take that question. We kind of answered it, but maybe how can I know? Yeah. So I think. I don't want to sound kind of callous, but let's see this. So I think the prior discussion maybe clarified it for me. So this is, how can I know that I can start my own Power BI consultant business? And I think I have the answer for you. I think I know the exact answer, and the answer is by starting one. That's how you're gonna know. You're never gonna know, right? So, and of course, it's like we want to go on a road trip, but we wait for all the lights to be green. That's what we want to do, right? We want to say, hey, when I have clients, when I'm well respected in the whole community as a Power BI expert, when I have a blog which gets thousands of views, and I have clients knocking at my door, breaking it down, then of course, mate. I mean, then anybody can become a consultant. But what if you don't have a blog? What if you have nobody lined outside your door, right? I mean, Charles didn't. Can you do it then? Well, that's the only time you can. Right, so I would say by starting one. Now, of course, I'm being a little bit kind of, I don't mean quit your daytime job and just say, oh yeah, open up shop, right? And that's not what I'm saying. But what we were saying earlier, kind of validate the idea, right? Go find one person, and I love that idea, right? I mean, so you may end up helping millions of people. I hope you do, but it's gonna start with one person. So focus on that. Is there one person out there you can help? Is there one person out there you can help? Find them. Go find them. Try to help them. See how it goes, right? So don't quit your job, but kind of validate that idea, right? And essentially that's the MVP, right? I mean, so I talk about that inside my course. This is the minimum viable product. What is the smallest version of that you can do? Work on a quick project. And of course, that's it. Cool. So let's switch to the phone. And there are fewer of us on, but that's okay. That's cool. So on the phone, Nathan, Kathy, Greg, Charles. If you guys had any questions or anything that you wanted to talk about. All right, terrific. So great. Let's end on that. Charles, thanks again for everything you shared and being so generous with that and sharing your story. I would say generous and brave, because it takes a bit of both to do what you did today. So thank you, mate. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, welcome. Can I add one more thing, Avi?
Absolutely. Yeah, hold on. I'll bring you up here. Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, what's interesting and maybe missed in the first part of the conversation too was as people go through this journey, they're going to find there's some people that may not support them that they thought would. After I've taken the journey, I've gone back to those people and I try to learn from them. Why did you think, why did you tell me not, and it's interesting. It's all goes back to fear. What I was doing potentially challenged their whole worldview and what they grew up doing too. And it was risk. It was taking risk, for the family, and they had fears for, the family, everything. So it was all very interesting because, to revisit those, and you're going to have haters people that are be like, what are you doing? But me being a data driven person, I went back and was like, why did you have this data point? And it was all very interesting. It all went back to people were projecting their fears. And I think maybe you had it on one of your videos. It's like, I'm not going to accept these fears. They're your fears. but I'm going on this journey, and this is not a fear for me. So I'm going to take this path. So that was my ending thought.
Wow, that's really good. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, that was kind of brave of you to go back, but yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, if I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking like maybe at the moment, I don't know if you did that, but it's quite possible. Like I'm thinking back to my journey, and man, it was some time ago, so it's hard to recall. But it's possible that the thought that crossed my mind would be that, oh, this person doesn't believe in me, right, or something like that. And of course, I would feel resentful, like, oh, why they shouldn't believe in me? I mean, they should support me. I mean, I need the support. But of course, I mean, I think as you when you went back and talked to them, it was something entirely different, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they maybe did have your best interests in mind, but because
Right.
of kind of their worldview, they really were concerned. So it was not about that they believe you in something, but they just wanted the best for you, and at that point, that's what they thought, or yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. Wow. So terrific, mate. All right, folks, we'll see you next time. Until then, power on.
Thanks. Bye.